Yeah, I'll fool back this second.
All right, welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council meeting. It is August 31st, and Councilmember Austin Maxwell has our prayer and our pledge.
Okay. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together tonight. As a council, be with us to make the most wise and the best decisions for all the citizens of Murfreesboro. Please be with our citizens. Please be with our police and our fire, all our first responders, and those that serve the city. For in your name we pray, amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple of housekeeping items. One, more of an announcement. Middle Tennessee Electric had their annual meeting this past weekend, and they made an announcement, and I think it's important just to show the partnership with the City of Murfreesboro that they're investing $85 million in the City of Murfreesboro to bring fiber to our community. They're also partnering with the Murfreesboro Housing Authority to provide free internet service to qualifying households in low-income communities. So it was a welcome announcement, and I know being one of our longtime corporate partners here in the city that wanted to make sure our citizens knew that. Also, if you'll look at your agenda, item 12 needs to be, so there's several people who are here who are wanting to speak on items 12 and 14, but item 12 needs to be item 14B. So there's a 14A and a 14B. So we'll have the discussion on the development agreement and the purchase and sale agreement for the Broad Street project, and then we'll talk about the resolution. So I want to make sure everybody knew that. All right, we have a public comment on actionable items. We have 7 people who have registered to speak. We would like to ask, if you'll come to the podium, if you'll state your name and number, or excuse me, your name and your address. We don't need your phone number, and I don't think anyone listening, you would want them to have your phone number. If you will state your name and your address, you'll have 3 minutes. If you'll keep all of your comments directed towards the council, it'll be just like one of our public hearings. So first we have Mr. Richard Baines. He's at, and I'll go ahead and state your address. He's at 1319 Parkview Terrace.
Thank you. First off, I'm not against the Keystone project itself, but I do question the wisdom of funding a pedestrian bridge at Southeast Broad and Church. The idea of a pedestrian bridge came out of a public comment meeting a couple of years ago regarding the development of the Bottoms area. I participated in that meeting. I also was the only member of the public to attend a public comment meeting on the subject of a pedestrian bridge over Broad Street. I voiced opposition to the idea then, as I do now. If you refer to Exhibit E, when this presentation comes up, you'll see, if you can blow it up on your screen, you'll see a rendering of a bridge that shows it is not handicap friendly. And I understand that this is a rendering, it's not a final design, but it will take a substantial redesign and require a costly, may require a costly elevator to make it handicap friendly. Sam Huddleston is more qualified than I am to explain the nuances in design required to make the bridge handicapped accessible at both ends. My estimate, not knowing the height of the bridge, is that a handicap ramp would lengthen the trip across Broad Street by up to 800 feet. It would benefit skateboarders more than it would the handicapped. I have an idea that it would be far less costly and include a way to connect the biking trail from the Discovery Center to Cannonsburg, thus connecting 2 destinations at minimal cost. I realize that what we have now is conceptual, but it is a time to seek input. When we had a public gathering, I call it, on the Canonsburg, what to do with Canonsburg. I think it would be a good idea if the city would sponsor some kind of a public gathering again on the the big projects that we have that are going to shape the future of Murfreesboro. This is one of them, the Keystone Project. The other one's the Methodist Church on the square, and the other one is Canonsburg. It would be good to have a public input on how all three of these projects relate and are beneficial to the city. I think that public input would be very useful and vital on all three of these projects. And I would urge the city to consider that. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. All right, Mr. Tim Markin, 1349 Gresham Park Drive. He's speaking against items 14A and 14B. Okay, Mr. Josh Reynolds, 734 Cherokee Court.
Right across from MTSU. We'll have the grill out this weekend. Come on over.
Shock the world on Saturday.
That's it. That's it. My name is Josh Reynolds. We do live in town, love Murfreesboro. I have a couple of small businesses that we operate on the square. We've got a drop-in office space. We do some pop-up retail shops, as well as manage some commercial developments from the offices there. Also represent the building ownership of 112 South Maple, which is the building right next door. We're attached to level 3. Just to give you a little bit of reference where all of that is. And I am here to express my approval for the Broad Street development. We're excited about it from a small business owner's perspective, from a building owner's perspective, and certainly as a citizen of the lovely city. I am doubly interested as I am also working to develop the hotel that will go within the Broad Street development. And so for the last 6 months or so, myself and our team have been looking at different opportunities for hotels within the Broad Street development. We've had a couple of independent studies that have come in and looked at it. We call them feasibility studies in the hospitality industry, where they look at everything from the availability of empty rooms to the opportunity for growth to the financial and economic impact of things. Inside of both of these feasibility studies, we also had the Broad Street development as part of that, so that was factored into the viability of a hotel. The output of that is about 3 weeks ago, we got a confirmed offer from Hilton. In fact, Hilton has made a financial offer to us to bring what we call it's Hilton's brand, the Tapestry, which is an upscale hotel. We consider it a boutique hotel that would come and be part of the program. If allowed, the hotel has conference space, about 100 rooms, restaurant, kind of all the things that we have seen within that. From all of that, we are very excited about the Broad Street development and very excited to be part of what is going to shape Murfreesboro and how we're going to see and continue to see the city grow. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Ms. Tara McDougall, 3819 Oakleaf Drive.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, City Council members, city staff, and guests. My name is Tara McDougall, and I am President and CEO of Discovery Center. I also served on the Historic Bottoms Study Group in 2016. I am honored to speak in favor of the development tonight. My comments are going to be short and sweet. Discovery Center is a good neighbor, perhaps a great neighbor. A neighbor for 36 years, and we want to see the neighborhood get even better. The project will help the entire area promote walkability, advance opportunities for Murfreesboro residents, and improve quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. And I think we all would say you are a great neighbor. Mm-hmm. All right, Ms. Sarah Callender for Main Street, Murfreesboro.
Good evening. I represent Main Street, Murfreesboro. The historic downtown in Murfreesboro has grown over the past 37 years under the Main Street program as a central location to shop, meet friends, work, and take care of government needs. It has been revived and considered by some as a destination place, but it still needs our help to meet its full potential and stand competitively against neighboring downtown communities and even shopping districts within our own city that have received recent attention with new growth and housing options. Historic districts typically have a variety of housing sizes, conditions, ages, quality, and prices. Historic downtowns have long been recognized for their contribution to our community's cultural, aesthetic, and social character. The challenge our downtown now faces is lack of housing for people who want to live in and experience the heart of our city. Our older and historic neighborhoods have served generations of families well. Now, our downtown must meet the demand for more housing to provide homes for the young, homes for our working class, our community servants, including teachers, firefighters, police, and local government, as well as homes for retired citizens. Historic preservation began as a grassroots movement, and it largely remains so today. Nothing is considered historically or culturally significant without an advocate who speaks up about why the site, building, or cultural practice is important. These advocates are not only architectural, that's a hard word, architectural historians, they are residents and activists who recognize that places matter. Historic designation is a public recognition that a site's history is important for everyone to know about. For that reason, preservation is also important for social cohesion. It is a tool that allows community members to identify and protect the spaces that are significant to the collective memory and identity of that community. For the Murfreesboro Historic Business District to move to the next level of being considered a true destination place, we must welcome growth while at the same time protecting our historic authenticity. In order to achieve this, our downtown community needs more space for retail, restaurants, and office use. Also, our downtown needs to prepare for tourism with hotels and adequate parking and signage. Lastly, our downtown needs more housing. The apartment and condo mixed-use option is one way to encourage residential growth, creating a walkable downtown that supports and encourages locally owned businesses and enhances our sense of place as a destination to visit. The overall renovations proposed for the Broad Street and Church Street entrances of our historic downtown will be a game changer in years to come for all of our community members who have invested in having a small business downtown. Really quick, out of the 43 business owners who responded to the Main Street survey, 87% agreed or strongly agreed that as a downtown business, they support new development that includes opportunity for mixed use. 61% agreed or strongly agreed as a downtown business, there is a need for increased housing options in the historic downtown. And 70% agreed or strongly agreed as a downtown business, they feel that mixed-use development in the historic downtown would help grow their business. Result surveys are available for all City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Callender. Mr. Michael Busey, owner of the State Farm downtown.
Yes. Yeah, Michael Busey. My address is 1019 North Maple Street, and I've got a little business here, insurance agency up on the square at 123 North Maple. I'm speaking in support of the project. I think it brings a lot of opportunity, a lot of people, a lot of potential growth. Sarah mentioned the housing, that we need more of the housing. We need more of the residential, multifamily type things downtown, just from different studies that we've had. The project overall focuses on the walkability of downtown. I think bringing people outside, I tend to look at community, commerce, and preservation, those three things when I think of downtown. It brings a sense of community downtown and the walking areas, the green areas that it does provide in the project. It's not only a lot of retail space, but some residential ownership as well as some leasing. And when you put those two together, it brings a good mix of diverse people downtown. As far as commerce, anything we can do to keep people in this area. I think it helps all of our businesses downtown. We see the areas on the avenue and other areas, and not knocking those areas, but we're trying to just get more support of the downtown area, and I think this project definitely does that for us. It doesn't pull away from the historic nature. It allows those two things to tie in. I think even the pedestrian bridge over Broad allows us to tie into that side of town and extend downtown to a certain degree to that space over there as well. Again, in conclusion, I'll be a little bit brief, like the young lady from Discovery Center, but it brings people an opportunity downtown while also just providing parking. I think is a big thing, but the concealed parking areas, the parking that's blocked off. Anybody that knows me know I'm kind of one to get upset about the parking, especially when certain vehicles are parked in front of my business. But in this situation, it provides its own parking, and I think that's just a marvelous thing. We're not adding additional parking burdens on the existing facility. So, again, just speaking in support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Busey. All right, lastly, Mr. Doug DeRoss, owner of Marinas on the Square.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do as far as what this is going to be in the future. But I do know what it was like 25, 30 years ago on the square. It's like Bill knows. When I first bought Marinas over 25 years ago, we had 4 restaurants. Kebab Cuisine, Sebastian's, with Mediterranean Restaurant, City Cafe, and myself. To see what the square is now and the vision that the people had 25, 30, 35 years ago when they improved the square itself and buried many of the utilities. That is when everything started to turn. When I bought Marinas, over 50% of the buildings were vacant. Right. That's not the case anymore. If they're vacant now, it's because of a codes issue, and they just need to be brought up to codes. The square is no longer the place people only go if they're buying a house or getting a divorce or going to court. They're coming to the square because they want to eat. Let me tell you that. I met people after being at Marinas for 10 years. They're like, oh, you didn't even know we had a square. Everybody knows we have a square now, all right? Especially the college students. It's one of the first things they're introduced to. We have a very eclectic group of people that come into Marinas, whether it's college students, high school students from Central when they have their short dates. I've had probably over 200 people get engaged at Marinas, all right? And so I say all that this is a great thing that the city wants to do, I think, as far as just carrying what's been done for the last 25, 30 years even further. The more you can walk around the square, the more people talk about it. I'm amazed and so glad to be a part of the growth that has happened on the square. My family, whenever they come in, because it's every 5-10 years from Texas, they're like, oh my goodness, y'all just keep growing. And so I'm really glad to be a part of that. I think this is a great idea. I'd like to see a few more projects like that, like this, and I'm totally in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. All right. Thank you for everyone who came out and spoke. All right, we'll move to your consent agenda. You have 7 items on your consent agenda.
No questions or comments. I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to old business. You have ordinance 23026. This is amending the zoning ordinance for building height. This is second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 9, ordinance 230Z28, rezoning property along Veterans Parkway. This is second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 10, ordinance 230Z29. This is rezoning property along East Vine Street.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 11. This is resolution 20. This is new business 23R27, accompanying TDEC permit for qualified biogas property.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. What you have before you is Resolution 23R27. It's providing approval under the Jackson Law for the construction of a qualified biogas property within the city of Murfreesboro. Really, what requires this is because the city adopted the Jackson Law in December of 2016. Rutherford County adopted the Jackson Law in November 2005, and TDEC will not evaluate the city's permit application unless and until both the Murfreesboro City Council and the Rutherford County Commission have approved and authorizing a resolution for constructing the project. So I have some slides I can go over with you to kind of give you the guts of the main points of the resolution, or you all can consider that without that presentation.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. I've gotten multiple emails from members of our community that live around the Butler Drive area, and the amount of misinformation that has been sent out based on this proposal and what we've been studying for literally the last 5 or 6 years has been astounding. And so every single person that I interact with and will send, hey, here's actually what we're talking about. Here's some videos that our production team have put together. I encourage you to watch those videos and see what the actual process is. Here's the information that, we don't know if this production facility will be the answer, if it's going to happen. But this is what we've talked about. This is what the EPA says. We're not bringing in trash to burn trash. We're not bringing in a production facility that you're going to smell. I can tell residents, for someone who has lived through this and lived through the discussions on the landfill, if y'all think that we would want to bring something else into our community that will cause elected officials 15 years from now the heartache that we're going through, you have absolutely lost your mind. We are not going to do that. And so I even say, Mr. Gore, where do you live?
I live in Indian Hills.
And Mr. Gore is the one who has been studying this the entire time, and he lives in the Indian Hills neighborhood. So I can't imagine that you would want to approve something or bring something into the community that would actually hurt your home value in where you live.
No.
So what I just want to say is, please get information from us. We have nothing to hide on this. We can show you what we're proposing, but again, it may not be the answer, and this is just a part of the process that we have to go through.
I would love to add to your comments, Mayor, but I will be silent and be available for any questions.
Well, and one thing I did put in the email I sent everyone. General Mills has had an anaerobic digester for almost 20 plus years that's 0.1 miles away from the Indian Hills neighborhood, and no one knows that anaerobic digester is there. And that's one of the things that we're talking about doing that could be a possibility, but it's already on Butler Drive. So I want to tell the residents, please let us know if you have questions, but some of the information that's been floating out there, inaccurate would be giving it credibility to say that the information is inaccurate, because it's just plain false on what's being portrayed.
Mayor, I've tried to put together kind of an email response, and when people call, I ask for their email first and try to get them the information so that they can read it and watch the videos and look at the news stories. And after they review the information, if they still want to call, I'm happy to talk to them about it. And some folks they're just against it, and they don't want it there. I do not consider this piece of property a part of the Indian Hills neighborhood. It's right off of I-24 interchange, and it's on an industrial corridor. And we've looked at that site since 2018, before there was even a waste-away discussion. It was basically to get trucks in and off the interstate, to get the trash in and transfer it to another landfill as efficiently and effectively as possible. So.
Yeah. And with that, I'm thankful for the county. We all have been working with the county, and I think everyone is committed to know that it's going to take all of us to be able to work through this. So I'm thankful for Mayor Carr, Commissioner Cush, all the people who are on Public Works who have been working hard, and we're all trying to go in the right direction, working together.
Yep. Thank you all.
Anything else? I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we're going to move to item 13. This is a non-exclusive public right-of-way license agreement with Google Fiber.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, here tonight to present a pretty standard right-of-way agreement to allow Google Fiber to install broadband internet infrastructure in our right-of-way. This document would govern the agreement between the city and Google, and we recommend your approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Roman Hankins from our legal staff is also here, who is a primary representative on the legal team for the city.
It was said this is an additional revenue stream potentially for the city.
Yes, there is a small revenue sharing component with this that was part of the agreement, part of the offer between the city and Google.
What would that be roughly a year? Do we even know that?
I don't think we've got the information on their projected revenues. I think we have the reimbursement. Roman is 2%, or what they offer to the city is 2% of their revenue.
Okay.
All right, as far as if they cut into a road, I saw an article about Louisville that they would cut some roads and inadequately filled them back in. Could we look at doing something like a zoning thing where we kind of bring it in a little bit at a time, make sure when they patch a road, if they have to, that it's brought up to a standard that we would be happy with?
Our city engineer is very jealous of our public roadways, and so we look very carefully at any opportunities that anyone, developers, contractors, utility providers, where they request actually physically cut the pavement. We have a very robust repair program and inspection program, and so we follow those. Not saying they always get it right, but those requirements are already in place and already being followed by our public works staff, and we'll treat this work similarly. Most of the small fiber are using direct bury and direct push and some other trenchless type technologies to avoid cuts of the roadway, but occasionally those are required depending on the complexity of the road crossing and the intersections.
Okay. Yeah. If I could address Councilman Wright's decision, we worked, Mr. Hankins and I worked closely on Section 2.7 of the agreement with respect to repair to make sure that we had that as tightly, sealed up so that we wouldn't be left holding the bag if things weren't repaired in a timely manner. Fantastic. Thank you.
Any questions?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. So we've got to welcome Middle Tennessee Electric with fiber into our community, and now we'll welcome Google Fiber into our community. So welcome to Murfreesboro. All right, we'll now move to item 14. This is the development agreement and purchase and sale agreement for Project Keystone Broad Street Redevelopment Project.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of council, again here tonight to review the development agreement, purchase and sale agreement, and the item that we shifted down the agenda, which will come up next, and that would be the resolution and economic impact plan associated with the Broad Street redevelopment project. From the development team tonight, Matt Taylor, Bart Klein are here representing the design side. Todd Seifert, Ryan Little, Dean Montgomery, and Rob Turner are here representing the developer, HRP Residential. Certainly, Mr. Tyndall, Mr. Tucker, and I have spent a good bit of time on this, and so from the staff side, we can offer to answer questions that you might have, but we also have the development team and the design team here that may be able to provide some additional information if you have specific questions. So I do have a short presentation here that will just recap some of the details of the development agreement and the companion purchase and sale agreement, and I'll share those with you now. And so this is with HRP Residential. It involves the purchase of 7.08 acres for $5 million. Quick math on that's about $16 per square foot from the city. It does include a provision that the developer complete intersection improvements at Vine and Broad, as well as Church and Broad. They will design those and construct them. The city will actually reimburse them for cost. The point on these intersection improvements is that those were planned improvements that the city had already. We thought it would be better for the city and our contractor not to be in the way of their construction, and so we felt it better for them to control the design and construction schedule, and the city would get the benefit of their design and construction administration and their ability to work with their contractor to control cost and schedule, and removing the city from that process. So we do have an agreement in there to reimburse them for certified cost, similar to what we would do on a road project with unit prices and certified invoices. They proposed 30 to 40,000 square feet of retail. I think Mr. Reynolds, who spoke earlier, talked about the 80 to 150 key upscale hotel and the details that they have working. This is language from the development agreement that I'm citing here to you, and until this project moves forward and they'll get a signed agreement for sure on that, we'll see the that tightened up. But this is what they proposed in the development agreement: 80 to 100 for sale and 239 for lease residential units, 715 garage and 780 total spaces. So some of those spaces would be surface spots that would be available there inside the facility or inside their development. Total capital cost on this is projected at 170 to 175 million. They've asked for a 20-year, $26 million TIF. We're requiring planned development zoning, and so if the development agreement is approved by this body, the design team would work to submit that in September and start through the process of rezoning, which would appear before our planning commission and then before the mayor and council for rezoning application. The impact fees do apply. The offsets available from the impact fee for work that they would perform or benefits that they would provide for those various things would be given offsets. We have worked on some preliminary estimates of their impact fees and offsets. Don't have those finalized yet, but we'll memorialize those with staff, city administration, and the developer so that we understand where those are at. Impact fees were roughly $2.5 million when we calculated it based on a typical build out. It'd actually be based on the actual square footages and numbers of units when they apply for permits, but just as an estimate of what that would be, it'd be about $2.5 million. The vast majority of that impact fee actually came from the multifamily at $1.8 million. The zoning and TIF process estimate take about 6 months from now, assuming a September target for submitting that for planning consideration. I anticipate starting construction then in Q2 of 2024. We anticipate completing construction Q4 of 2027 to Q1 of 2028. It includes clawbacks and milestones. Be glad to go into those with detail, but if you need to, but just to know that those are in there, and those are opportunities for us to, if the project defaults or if it stalls out, we'll be able to claw those properties back or reverse the transactions, whatever may be appropriate. We anticipate the TIF would be initiated in tax year 28 or tax year 29, depending on when they actually finish construction and those improvements are appraised and assessed and placed on the tax bill. The TIF max term then would be for 20 years, that going to 48 or 49. It would cap at $26 million, and so it's the thing that happens first, 20 years or $26 million of revenue from the TIF, and then it would cease. And so that's a quick rundown of the development agreement. Again, our teams here, city staff, would be glad to answer any questions, talk through this, see how we can help you understand the agreement and the purchase and sale agreement.
Any questions for Mr. Huddleston or Mr. Tyndall? I know council members have gotten a lot of information on this over the last week.
I'm glad the impact fees are back in there. Originally, they weren't. So what led to the change? I guess why were they out to begin with on the original document sent to us?
Yeah, sure. So
And now that they're back in, great. I'm just trying to understand what happened.
So we had done some preliminary work on the impact fee on this project and the offsets, and so from our early check, it looked like the offsets would cancel out the impact fees. They're spending a lot of money in the public right of way and taking on some other things with parking and public improvements that would in the impact fee ordinance provide those offsets, which would credit them toward their required impact fee. And so we were glad to have that come in and put this back in as a condition, and I'll be glad to share, as soon as we get finalized, I'll be glad to share with Mayor and Council the accounting of those fees.
Okay.
As far as financing and stuff, I was talking to a banker this morning and said with a project like this and the political and the economic climate we're in, probably the maximum you'd be able to borrow is probably 60% of the total project. Do we have a strong commitment letter? Do we have proof of funds for the rest of the 40%? Do we know for a fact this shovel is going to go in the ground?
Yes, I'd see if Dean Montgomery or Ryan or Todd wanted to maybe come up and address that.
Let me address it. And the development agreement actually requires that information be provided to us at the appropriate time to assure that the project's financed. And because they have to still go through the planning process and everything else before they can get commitment letters, because the bank's not going to give you a commitment on a project that hasn't been fully designed and approved and has the entitlements. So once those are all done, then they go into the round of financing, and then they'll be able to provide documentation to us. All those are provided for in the clawbacks.
Are there still, if we were to approve this, what are the other steps that would have to come back to the council?
So if you were to approve this and the purchase and sale agreement got signed tonight or shortly, the development team would submit an application for the PUD zoning, start with our staff review. We'd schedule that for the next available planning commission meeting, do the neighborhood meetings, schedule it for, and I think the schedule was for that to be a November public hearing at planning commission. Following that, it would be referred to mayor to the city council to schedule a public hearing and hear the zoning request on first reading and then second reading, and so we'd anticipate that in the December to January timeframe. And that'd be a much more detailed look at the architecture and site plan, and we'll, you know, right now we have ranges in there that we're going to do 30 to 40,000 square feet of retail, and until you design that building package from the inside out and the parking and lay it out on the site, those numbers won't stop moving until we get those walls settled. So we'll have a much better plan that'll be developed in that plan development zoning. I know there was a question about how much variance would be allowed. We'll be able to see this in a zoning package before we close on the real estate. So the zoning entitlements there first. They're scheduled to actually purchase the property following the zoning entitlement, which is pretty typical in a real estate transaction.
Craig, have we seen the financing? Like they've actually said, here is the amount of money from private investors, here's what the bank, have we actually seen that? Or are we awaiting to see it?
Well, we've seen a commitment, or not a commitment, we've seen a letter from a bank expressing that they are behind this project and they feel like that they're able to provide the financial support that's necessary for the project, at least from the debt standpoint. But again, you really can't get a bank commitment until they know what they're committing to. And so we still have the design process to go through, the entitlement process. So, there's really nothing that could be secured to provide that information at this point in time. But the development agreement calls for that at the appointed time where those would be in place.
This may be better off on the next question, but as far as the public parking, is that planned to be paid for parking, or is that free to the public parking, or how does the public parking look to go?
So it would be available to the public. The decisions on whether that would be free or paid would be later. My editorial comment on it is that the downtown area is headed eventually toward paid parking of some type as the supply and demand, to help manage supply and demand. Initially, there will not be enough demand per se for it to be paid parking. I think we've shared this number with you before. We have 600 parking spaces in City Hall parking garage. Our first floor utilization is at about 30% during the business day. Our second floor utilization, which is closer to Vine Street and Church Street and sees a little more use from the downtown area, is about 50% utilized during the business hours. So we're looking at 200, 300 available parking spots any time of the business day. Obviously, after City Hall closes, that number goes way up into 400 to 500 available.
And I'll make a quick comment towards parking as someone who has a business across from the courthouse, and we consistently deal with Register of Deeds and people who can't find places to park in that governmental corridor. I mean, I think we highly recommended back when Mayor Burgess, the construction of the downtown parking garage, that I'm giving you my editorial comment. You know, we've got a taxpayer-funded parking garage that does not pay for itself. And so I think we can go back and look at just the records in our parking here at City Hall and how much that we have spent over the last 5 years in lighting upgrades and sprinkler upgrades and parking deck and surface deck concrete replacement upgrades, and the taxpayers paying for that. And so I think there's a valid argument at some point to say the parking garages, even on public property, should at least be able to break even, that a taxpayer in West Murfreesboro is not subsidizing the parking garage downtown. And so I think we're headed there, but until we get to the point that there is lack of parking, and there is lack of parking at the county garage right now. I mean, you can't get in and out of that county
especially
garage.
In that early morning.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get to that point. I hope we can figure out somehow that at least parking is break even.
So for just a reminder, you know, we did that downtown parking and mobility study that inventoried a lot of the public spaces, a lot of the private spaces, gave us a bit of a roadmap for our helping address the short-term and mid-term and long-term parking needs downtown. A lot of options were out there as far as you know, charging for public parking, a parking benefit district that would charge and then use those monies to operate and maintain and perhaps even construct new public parking. So there's a lot of options available to us. I think our job, I think staff and the mayor and council's job is to keep our eye on the ball on that and make sure that we have a responsive plan to parking in the downtown area. This project will create 780 parking spaces, but we also know it will carry a very heavy parking load of its own. And so some of those spaces will be specific to the residential users, but a vast majority will be available for the public to use for visiting the shops and retail in their area, plus other parts of our downtown. And also mention to you that we've one of the recommendations of the downtown parking study was the wayfinding program. We have a consultant on board now. You authorized us a few weeks ago to hire a consultant. That contract has been signed, and so we're ready to go to work on that wayfinding, which was one of the things Ms. Callender raised tonight in her public comments. So just to let you know that we're all of the things that we have talked about in the Highlands and Bottoms studies and a lot of the initiatives that have been before us in the planning level, we're now moving to the next stage of execution.
We're not talking about the resolution, but the resolution says it's a privately owned parking garage. And I guess my issue is we're waiving the taxes, and the developer can put a gate up and charge anybody to park in there. I understand the people in the apartments, the condos, the hotels, they got to have a space. Totally get that. But if you're wanting it to spur people from the west side of town, the north side of town to come down, visit the restaurants, all the new retail, I'm not comfortable with basically waiving the taxes via the TIF, and then it's a private entity that they can charge whatever they want for parking.
Yeah,
I'd be much more comfortable over 20 years that they can't charge for parking. Once the TIF's gone, it's yours. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, so the enabling legislation for the TIF specifically address parking garages, whether public or private, and so the enabling legislation allows that. This is a very expensive part of their project, and so we believe it'd be appropriate for the TIF funding as outlined. I think the market will tell us a lot about what happens on parking. And so there are a lot of publicly owned spaces, I would say, for example, Mayor, that I think will be looking at the practicality of setting up a way to recover our cost or to charge for those, even though those are publicly paid for spaces. And so we think that it's the right approach to getting that additional downtown parking, and the parking supply and demand will sort itself out over time on whether this parking needs to be paid for to not let the parking be abused. I think that would be one reason that a developer, that the private owners may want to charge for the parking, is just so that people aren't parking in it for free to go use it for other things. And sometimes that supply and demand paying for it is one of the ways you can help balance that out.
The purpose of tax increment financing, the TIF program, is not to create a parking garage or any kind of public utilities. It's to create a private entity and to incentivize development that would not otherwise occur. And so the development here wouldn't occur because of the parking garage, or if it did occur, that parking garage would be paid for by all the other individuals that were there. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect of it, if it was designated as free parking, we would not be able to do exactly what the mayor talked about, and that's when we need to, and when other downtown facilities need to charge for parking, it would impede the ability to be able to do that because we'd have free parking sitting over here, which was really not the purpose of the entire program in any event. So I think we're allowed to, under the statutes, to incentivize certain private developments by paying for certain things, one of which is a parking garage.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, we're doing a TIF to build apartments. We can call it a parking garage all we want, but we're doing it to basically build apartments.
Well, it's a mixed-use development, so it, as Sam outlined, it has office in there, hotel, retail. It does have apartments components to it, and those apartments, because of the way that the market is dictating how financing is being done, helps pay for all the rest of those entities. But there are condominiums for sale units in there. It's a mixed-use development. Most mixed-use developments will require apartments, and that's because there is such a strong demand in the market right now for apartments.
Yeah, but take it to another level, Austin. We're selling city property to an apartment developer.
I think it's,
and giving a tax break.
Yeah, but you know, guys, I think I've tried. So Gary Whitaker sitting in the audience, and Gary will tell you probably a year ago when they brought this as an idea, I told them that they had lost their mind and was completely against any discussion on this. And you know, I know we can talk about polls or surveys, or you know, we've got the downtown survey. I know y'all did a survey, but I think if you ask the majority of the residents in Murfreesboro what a TIF is, they couldn't tell you how a TIF operates. And I think it's our responsibility. We've studied that and we understand. But you know, the way I look at it, a TIF is not the government giving something away. We're getting something because we are getting zero on that property right now. And I understand to say that we're selling government apartment for apartments, but we're focusing on 200 units of an apartment when you've got a hotel, you've got parking, you've got office space, you've got retail space, you've got WGNS across the street that is moving from a dilapidated building. They're selling their building and they're getting something. So, I mean, I think we're focusing on a very minute part of an overall large project. And, you know, I've tried to be, poke every hole in this, Austin, because I think it's very fair to say that we've made mistakes downtown. I think Bill and I talked about this morning about, you know, I think going back to 2016 when I was sitting in Franklin trying to help negotiate a deal to get the church because the church was going to get torn down. I don't think anyone would say that we would think we'd be sitting here in 2023 and that project would not have started. The thing I do like about the development agreement that's in place, all the mistakes that we made back in 2016, 17, and 18, all those safeguards are in this development agreement. And you know, I think we've learned on that. But the other thing I would say, 3 weeks ago Tuesday, I was walking in downtown Knoxville. And the vibe and what's happening in their downtown compared to what's happening in Murfreesboro are completely different. We walked the entire downtown from the old city to one end, all the way back up to Market Street, all the way around, and you look at the infrastructure that's been put in place, and the one common thing is that the Knoxville government helped that occur. And I think I didn't see a lot of moms and dads downtown going with their kids. It was all young professionals, students who were downtown, and we don't have that right now. And so, look, everybody has a different idea on this, and I respect everyone's opinion. But I think the idea that people are going to be living in these apartments and it's going to be school-age children, it just is not going to happen. It's going to be young professionals and retired people who want that downtown living, who may not can afford a condo, for example, in Knoxville that's $750,000. They may at that point in their life just say, look, we're totally fine renting something. And I think that's okay. So you look at Knoxville, you look at Chattanooga, you look at the thriving downtowns that we all want our downtowns to resemble or better resemble. They all have a component of people living downtown, and we have zero downtown units. The Highland study and the Bottom study all anticipated there being anywhere between 500 to 700 units. And Sam, you gave me this information today. Since 2016, how many downtown units have been developed or scraped?
Yeah, we estimate that 30 net have been added in that study area. That's net because there were scrapes and replaces. So
about 4 a year.
About 4 a year, yes.
And the part that I try to wade through, some of the people who are adamantly opposed of there being rental property downtown are people who have rental property already downtown, and they don't want the competition of someone raising the bar and saying, hey, there's a nice product now, and they don't have to go live in a 50-year-old house that is not maintained. Now, everyone's not like that, but I mean, guys, if you go to the downtown rental auctions that are in now, it's not people who are trying to buy a house to fix up. It's someone who's trying to buy a house to say, I'm going to buy this house as cheap as I can, I'm going to rent it for as much as I can, and I'm going to do as little as I can to it. And so this alleviates all that. Now, with that being said, and I'll shut up, this may not work. And Craig has heard me say this. We've announced project after project that doesn't happen. And so the first thing when I met with the development team was, I'm not supporting anything until that they can prove that they're going to make it work. And this is just one of the steps to make it work. So I would tell anyone who's watching this, I'm supporting this, but it may not happen. I hope it does, and I feel much more confident in this development group and the team that they've put together. But until I see a shovel go in the ground, I'm going to have skepticism until something happens. And as far as the tax incremental financing, the city's getting $1,900 a year off this property right now. And so if this does get to where it is, Austin, the councils who are sitting here in 2043, and all of a sudden they're going to have the tax revenue come in 2043, they'll be hugging our necks if we're still around here. So it takes vision, and so far I would be skeptical if I were a Murfreesboro resident, because there's a lot of the things that we've tried to do that just hasn't happened. But I also know that to get into the Hall of Fame in Major League Baseball, you only have to hit 3 out of 10, and hopefully this will be one of the 3 that we can hit.
I'll just say, I like the hotel. I like the condos. I like the retail. I want people downtown. I want them going to marinas. I want them going to Discovery Center. But once we open the door on 239 apartments, and then 200 more at One East College, and then 200 more at the electric department, and 200 more and 200 more, you have to ask yourself, is that what you want? And Shane, you said it at the workshop. I think we owe it to ourselves as a council to say, what is that mixture downtown? They'll have comps at some point in time once they have condos and condos for sale. I just personally would like to see more condos versus apartments. That's just me.
I get it.
Yeah, I agree totally, Austin. The mix is what the problem is with me. I mean, if you got to have some apartments, that's one thing, but when you have 239 and most likely going to be 80 condos, the mix just isn't right.
I mean, if I was as old as Gary Whitaker and couldn't mow my yard anymore, I'd get an apartment downtown, live downtown.
Craig, can I ask you? Craig, can I ask you a question? And I want to ask you this just so the other council members. We've had this discussion even as early as this week, because I know you've had some interest in the MED property, and what did I say as far as my opinion would be for more downtown residential units until we get something in place?
Right. You were opposed to it, and I think that we should realize that all the properties that we just talked about are not zoned right now for multifamily. They would have to come to council, and council would have a choice. Nobody's got a right to build those right now.
You mean we get to make that decision?
What's that?
We would get to make that decision?
Yes. Council would make the decision on
I
the
feel like that's what we're here for.
the zoning, right, on what they would be. So, you know, this is 239. Forget how many One East College is.
180, 189.
That gets us well, it gets us still below the market study, and I understand the desire for more condos, but right now what we're talking about in this market is the financing requires apartments, and you know, until we get that started, until we get some comps on some condos, we're not going to have a different mix.
I want to be clear. Apartments downtown get such a bad rap. You know, I met with a developer today who had a piece of property on Highway 99, and they were like, we want to put multifamily apartments there. I'm like, you've lost your mind. There's no chance anyone would support that. When I was in Knoxville 3 weeks ago, I stayed in an apartment. We did an Airbnb and stayed in an apartment, and I'm telling you, the apartment we stayed in was not an apartment. It was nicer than anything I would stay in at a hotel. So just because it's something that is advertised as an apartment does not mean that it's going to be, you know, like Austin in our world, like Lake Plaza, where all students are living and partying out on the balcony. It's, you know, that's the way I continue to rationalize it.
Yeah, and if I can, I want to say thank you to the business owners of downtown that pour into this community. And from where I'm sitting, we owe it to you guys to continue to invest in our downtown so that you have people to shop in your stores and eat in your restaurants and maybe even get their insurance with you, Michael. I don't know. But I love downtown, and when I look at this project, it reminds me of downtown Franklin, and that is one of my favorite places in the whole world. It is somewhere that I shop and I eat and I spend the weekend in the hotel, and I have friends that live in those apartments, and they're not college kids. These are not $1,200 apartments. These are successful attorneys and real estate professionals that spend a lot of money on rent, and their apartment is as nice as my house on the west side. So I'm not expecting, you know, these downtown, like you said, Mayor, the expectation of what we think of an apartment is downtown. And apartments are not just what people rent when they don't want to mow their yard anymore or when they're fresh out of college. People don't necessarily, and especially in my generation, crave home ownership like other generations have. You know, we choose renting because it's less maintenance. Maybe we travel a lot. Maybe we are recently divorced. Maybe we are an empty nester, you know? And so there's so many reasons to rent. And if you're going to rent an apartment in Murfreesboro, don't you want to walk to Marina's for the awesome lasagna? Yeah, I do, because I can't get that on the west side currently. And if you can tell, I really like Doug's restaurant, so I'm like going to come there for dinner after this. But I am so excited about this project. It has my support. And I wasn't on council when One East College happened, and I can understand where residents and the community is concerned about what happened at One East College. But I think you're right in that we've learned from our mistakes, and we've put that in this agreement, and the city attorney's office has done a great job of advocating for the city and protecting the taxpayers' money. So thank you, Adam, and the legal department. I am so excited for this project. I don't think it's perfect. I do hope it happens, but I know there are no guarantees. But I think we owe it to our downtown to do what we can to reinvest like they have invested in Murfreesboro. So it has my utmost support.
Craig, the last question I have, because I know the headlines will be City Council gives outside developer a $26 million tax break. That's what will be written.
Actually, I think we just wrote a check, $26 million.
They're not getting $26 million from the city, correct?
No, that's not the way incremental tax financing works. Incremental financing works. A portion of their property tax each year will collect all the property tax. A portion will be kept to help the city pay for its debts. Same way with the county. The county will collect its property tax and keep a portion to pay for its existing debt. And then the rest of that, after an administrative fee, will be returned to the developer. And that is over a 20-year period of time, whatever that amount is, up to 20 years and $26 million. So it depends on how much it gets developed in the period of time when the TIF would start. It depends on what the assessment is by the tax assessor. It depends on what the tax rate is. So $26 million may be an estimate of what may happen over the next 26 years or 20 years, but it's not necessarily an amount that they're going to get. The other thing that we need to consider on tax incremental financing, like I said, it is to incentivize a development that would not otherwise occur. There'll be other taxes that will be created from that development. And right now the projections, if you just use today's dollars, the city recovers all of its property taxes through the other direct taxes that are not existing now, and if the development doesn't go through, won't exist for several years. So the city will recover all the money that it's putting into the TIF program. If you put a reasonable rate of growth on that and you present value the whole thing, the city is about 150% to the good. That's just on the direct tax income from this alone. That the indirect, which would be other properties being developed around it, and having increased activity and increased property values, is a lot, adds a lot more to that prospect. So this assists in a larger area than just the property, the area where the property and the property tax incentive is coming to. It's a larger development that will benefit the city and its
But I think that's important for the resident to understand. The city is not taking a bond. We're not taking liability. We're not borrowing money. We're not writing a check to an outside developer. That outside developer is coming in and using the taxes that would be paid to help subsidize their project. But once that tax incremental financing, and heck, based on current assessments, if that assessment is high enough that it's paid off in 12 years, then once that's paid off, the taxpayer now gets all of that money coming back in.
Exactly. After the period of time for the TIF is over, then all the taxes accrue back to the county and the city. Another way to look at it is if this 7 acres was just developed and we said, you don't get any incentive, it may be able to pencil out a certain way with surface parking. But we've said, look, we want a higher density development here because it is a downtown urban area. We want more amenities in there. We want to be able to recover more of the direct tax impacts and the indirect tax impacts. So if you do all those things, we will help pay for a parking structure that we're going to require that you have to build, because we require that people do parking, and there are cities that will say you can develop, they don't worry about parking because they know that other people will build it. These are large cities. They'll have other private parking that'll be developed, and people will pay an enormous amount of money for that. But we say you got to build parking. You got to park your own. So to get the amount of development on this parcel, they have to put a structured parking garage in. That's extremely expensive, and the incremental tax that we're rebating to them to pay will help pay for that to fulfill those requirements.
Mayor.
Yes.
Before I make a motion, Bill, you got anything to say?
Are you going to make the motion after your comments? Or?
I am.
Okay, well, let me just quickly say something, because I'm probably the only one on council that won't be here in 2049 or 2048. Unless I really take care of myself, I'm probably not going to be here. But, so I won't be held accountable if this TIF's paid.
Gary Whitaker's still around. You'll be here.
Well, that's true. But, yeah, but he lives better than I do. If you're paying attention, you've learned a lot about how we make decisions, and particularly on decisions like this. There's a lot to be learned. Quite honestly, my time on council has taught me a lot about understanding TIFs and understanding the investment of the public into the city. There was a time that there wasn't a whole lot of interest in our downtown. We were stirring the pot pretty regularly, Doug, to get something going in our downtown. And now we have someone willing to put a $175 million project in our downtown. I don't know. Once burned, twice shy. We've dealt with issues that we were all excited about a project and it didn't come to fruition. But somebody is going to have the opportunity to change the dynamic and the environment, the economic culture of our downtown. Somebody who follows through on their projects are going to reap great reward financially and for our community aesthetically. I like this project. I like what it presents to the public. Might need to ask about pedestrian walkways and are they ADA accessible? Something that we're going to probably be required to do. Anything that you build now has to be ADA compliant. So, but I'm encouraged by this. I've listened to the people that are proposing it. I think it is an opportunity for our downtown, and quite honestly, given the scale of this project, I don't think that is requiring too much to have the TIF component of it. I think it makes it economically reasonable for the developers to invest that kind of money in our downtown. And my hope and my promise to them is that you will be held accountable for each of these. We learned how to do this. Staff and council have learned that there are benchmarks that need to be required. People need to require them, and there needs to be consequences if you don't follow through to a certain point. So I just want to say I'm encouraged by this, and not just what this project means, but what the potential for this whole area. If y'all remember, y'all may not remember, but I've got pictures why it was called the Bottoms. I mean, people would just blow their minds to look at what this part of our community. People blew their minds when we built Broad Street through there. This was shantytown, basically, of Murfreesboro. Regularly flooding, created the poorest of our community lived in this area. And now we have the opportunity to put this in this area. It can be transformative to our downtown and to our community. And so therefore I'm in support of it.
Kurt?
Thanks, Bill. When I came on the council in 2016, the first thing Joseph Baylott said, we needed to change our downtown. We've been talking about this ever since 2016, but we hadn't had anybody to invest. I think I'm excited about it because this is a game changer. It changes the look of our downtown. If we get both of these two projects, it really changes what our downtown looks like. It's going to be more attractable. You're going to have more people walking downtown, living downtown, and that's what we wanted. So with that being said, I'm in favor of this project. I'd make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 14. It's item 12, but we're going to call it 14B. This is the resolution 22R28 supporting tax increment financing of Project Keystone Broad Street redevelopment project.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Tax increment financing for Broad Street requires some actions by the council. I am happy to report that the Industrial Development Board approved the tax increment financing, the economic impact plan, and their funding agreement with HRP Properties yesterday. The city tonight, we asked that you take action on the resolution, which includes the economic impact plan, and this ultimately also must clear approval at the county commission. We anticipate that this will follow the September committee and meeting schedule with the county commission. I have just some quick slides that I think would be beneficial to our viewing audience and the audience here, just on the details of the TIF. So this action tonight would authorize the TIF, and it would also adopt the economic impact plan for the project. It was approved yesterday, as we reported, by the Industrial Development Board. Anticipate a county taking action on it in September. It also approves the economic impact plan, and Mr. Tyndall and some of our other documents, we have laid out the relative direct and indirect impacts from this project as well. It includes up to $175 million in capital. The tax assessor's office has estimated that it would appraise at about $150 million. So that's was the basis of the estimates that are included in the economic impact plan and some of the other documents. This does not include personal property. So this is really just the real estate. We don't anticipate there'll be a lot of taxable personal property in this development, but there may be a minor amount. The 20-year TIF capped at $26 million. It is whichever is reached first. So it'll run the time limit, or it will run the total revenue side of the game, and then it will end. The city property tax during the TIF period is estimated at $531,000. The TIF would receive approximately $435,000 of that. The city would retain $96,000. Those are and Craig helped me with this word, it slips my mind. Those are the dedicated property tax revenues that would cover debt service and some other things in the city budget.
Pretty close, yeah. We actually just reserve funds. County takes statutory dedication, but the cities don't do that, so we reserve those will go to debt service in a reserved account.
So out of that estimated $500,000 per year, the city would receive $96,000 that would be reserved for those dedicated uses. There was city direct tax revenue. This is outside the boundary of the TIF. Includes retail sales tax of $155,000 per year, and then hotel sales and lodging tax is estimated at $186,000 per year. Those obviously follow the splits that are required in our local option hotel and motel taxes for their distribution. And so when you look at this today, we receive $1,494 in property taxes currently. That comes from the WGNS parcel. The rest of it is tax exempt as government-owned property. We estimate that we would receive $450,000 $1,000 per year, and that is the reserve portion of the property tax plus the direct sales tax and lodging tax. After the TIF expires, we estimate that would be $885,000, and obviously these are in today's dollars. We've not tried to do time value of money or project those ahead, but just equaling it out on today's dollars. And that's all I have on the TIF. Mr. Tyndall, Mr. Tucker, and I are available for questions on the resolution and the economic impact plan. The funding agreement is between the Industrial Development Board and the developer, and it was included in your packet for information only.
Any questions for Mr. Holston?
The 80 to 100 condos owned by a private, homeowner, those property taxes would come to us as a city?
Yes, we send out the tax bills as normal, and then on the back side of that, between us and the county and the Industrial Development Board, those funds are accounted for and then distributed based on the TIF and the funding agreement.
So they're part of the TIF?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you looked at the breakdown, we included a table in your information tonight. It's something that we had before, but if you look at the breakdown of the, let me jump down to that. If you look at the breakdown of where the taxes come from, you'll see in here that we have condo 1-bedroom, condo 2-bedroom, those taxable values, and you'll see that that's assessed at a 25% rate, which is typical of residential. You'll also note that all of the other uses, including the multifamily, is assessed at the commercial rate of 40%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Before voting on this, Mayor, I want to clarify there's a typo on the agenda. This should actually be 23R28.
Okay, it's 23R28 is our resolution. So, Kurt, is your motion approving resolution 23R28?
Yes, sir.
Bill, you have a second for resolution 23R28?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion and a second for resolution 23R28.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade? Mr. Wright?
Nay.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I may just add a little commentary, there were a few questions I think might be helpful because it's related to this project Mr. Baines and some others brought up. This week, we received the agreement from TDOT. I think you have executed that for the pedestrian bridge. We have a $1.4 million grant from TDOT as a transportation alternative to build a pedestrian bridge over Broad Street. The beauty of that is it separates the numbers of people we think will be using that crossing away from about 40,000 cars per day. We anticipate there will be some city funding that'll have to supplement that, but we do have that grant out there. Mr. Baines asked about ADA accessibility, and obviously a city project, whether it's state funded or not, is required to comply. But doubly, we're required to comply when we have state and federal funds involved in our transportation needs. And so that agreement is out to be returned to TDOT for their execution. Once that's back with us, we'll start the process of that grant, which is to design and construct the pedestrian bridge. We have requests for qualifications out for a design team to help us with that as required by the federal process. I want to update you on Town Creek Phase 2, which was also a part of this. We continue to move forward with the details of the concept for Phase 2, which is immediately across Broad Street. But Ms. McDougall asked or mentioned, Town Creek, and I think Mr. Baines as well, the connection between Town Creek and Murphy Springs Discovery Center. Town Creek Phase 1 includes a pedestrian connection from Church Street and Broad Street intersection through the Town Creek corridor, and then tying in with the boardwalk and pedestrian ways that are in Murphy Springs, and so we'll have that physical connection with Town Creek Phase 1. It's tracking schedule-wise at about the same time of Phase 2. And then on Cannonsburg, some discussion about Cannonsburg. We have a task order out now doing a building evaluation on Cannonsburg. There's quite a bit of investment in structures there, and so, and as most of us, I think, do know, there are very few original buildings in there. All of those buildings were relocated from other parts of our community and reconstructed on site. They do have historic significance and historic value, but only one is original to that area. The steel bridge that crosses Town Creek by the replica grist mill was actually also brought in from Overall Creek. And I'll tell you that to say there's been a significant investment in Cannonsburg by the community since 1976 as a bicentennial project. And we think our responsibility is to understand where those buildings are at today and what kind of condition they're in, and then this document will help us make good decisions about that in the future. We don't have anything to announce on that other than I wanted to report to you we're evaluating building conditions, and we have that study out on that. I'd be glad to answer any additional questions you might have about that, but I thought maybe it'd be a good time to offer just some public comment on some of the questions raised by the public tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Charleston. All right, we need to talk about a contract to purchase buses. Mr. Brashear.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The Transportation Department is recommending a contract with Mid-South Bus Center for the purchase of 3 transit buses. In May of this year, the city issued a formal request for proposals on 9 transit buses. Mid-South proposed a price that was significantly lower than anticipated. This left room in our approved budget for an additional 3 buses. However, FTA procurement regulations would not allow us to purchase additional buses off of that solicitation. So we issued another request for proposal on 3 buses, and again, Mid-South came in at the lower price of $141,193 per bus for a total contract price of $423,579. The purchase will be funded with $384,751 in federal and state grants. The remaining local portion of $38,828 will be funded out of the city's general fund using reserved prior year funds. So again, we recommend approval of this contract, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second. Motion second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we have a polymer contract amendment. Mr. Gore.
More Darren Gore.
I think we're about to get like 4 of.
Don't go away.
Campaign slogan.
Mayor, thank you. City Council, appreciate the opportunity to present again before you tonight. A few just normal business items, some contract amendments. This is the Z-Tag polymers. It's used in our sludge dewatering system at the Water Resource Recovery Facility. We recommend approving this unit price contract with Solinus LLC, and we do have, it's funded from our operating budget, estimated annual expense of $350,000. I'm available for questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade? Aye. Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to fiscal year 24 sewer rehabilitation contract approval.
Thank you again, Mayor. We did solicit bids for our 2023-2024 sanitary sewer rehabilitation bid. We bid these about every year and a half to 2 years. We are looking at recommending approving the construction agreement with SBW Constructors using an alternate A bid pricing subject to legal's approval of surety and insurance. The expense is $6.9 million, just over $6.9 million, and it's being funded through a combination of our operating budget, working reserves, and reimbursements from developers for warranty work. just wanted to note that there is a much higher unit pricing in this particular contract. We believe that's just, quite frankly, due to a flooded market with a lot of the ARP, the American Rescue Plan grants that are out there, and a limited pool of contractors to do the work. But we still think there's value in doing it now versus waiting. Available for questions if you have them.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to EnviroSite Rover X Sewer Inspection System.
Yes, sir. Again, this is a request to replace Cobra Technologies CCTV equipment in our third and final CCTV inspection truck. We are $7,483 under our FY24 budget, and we would recommend approval of this purchase.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we've got item 19, crushed stone contract.
Yes, the most exciting one, our crushed stone contract. So we have estimated amount between stone that is picked up or delivered, and we do have unit prices. We recommend approving the contract with Blue Water Industries for our operation and maintenance construction crews. I'm available for questions if you have them.
I'm excited. So moved.
Second.
Motion is second.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Hey, that stone's going to be used to build the apartments.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
All right, we'll move. I don't think you have any board and commission.
Probably just go out and pave over it or something. So,
I don't think you have any board and commission appointments. You have, I don't see any beer permits.
We have 3 regular permits for new locations for restaurants at 1718 Memorial Boulevard, 1855 Medical Center Parkway Suite H, and a convenience store at 3127 Medical Center Parkway Suite B1, and a special event beer permit for Interfaith Dental Clinic event on October 26th. All applicants have met requirements for a permit and are recommended for approval pending final building and codes inspections.
so moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. You have one statement to be paid.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Any other business from staff? Any other business from council?
I'll read this and give a copy to Miss Brown because she will scold me if I don't, like I did last time. But at the end of the day, the council has done its business. I support the will of the council. But I'll go back to, we had 49 members from Main Street, 87% were in support of it. I respect that. Here's my 1,000. We're 85% live in the city of Murfreesboro and 77% were against it. Hopefully, this works out. And I'll leave it at that.
The only other business I have is it's the first weekend of college football. So good luck to
Go Vols.
MTSU playing against Alabama. So we want to say good luck with that and support our team in blue, and then we want to support the team in orange as well.
Saturday night, 7:30.
That's right.
Clemson?
No, Tennessee plays Saturday morning, 11 o'clock against Virginia in Nashville.
Yeah.
One last thing. Monday is a holiday, so we have a 3-day weekend, and we'll have a short week. So we'll meet the week after at workshop, and then the week after that, which is the 21st, will be our first night meeting of that month. So that'll be public comment.
Okay. So public comment will be on the 21st. We'll have our meeting on the 14th for our workshop meeting. And then also to the residents who are out there, the city is closed on Monday, so please check the website for your applicable trash pickup days on Monday.
So public comments
21st.
On the 21st.
No
okay.
meeting on the 7th.
No meeting on the 7th, because that's next.
Workshop on?
14th.
14th, okay.
All right, we are going to go into executive session. So I will gavel this meeting closed, and then we will go into E-session. We're going to be back in the administrative conference room. We'll stand adjourned.